Did you know that fencing used to have a rule that required opponents to shake hands after a match? This was mandatory. You see, fencing has a long history as an ancient sport. And so, with a lot of ancient things, it's tied to its etiquette. And so, at the start of each match, the opponents will salute each other, they'll salute the referee, and then they'll salute the audience. And then after that, they'll go ahead and the match begins.
En garde, prêt, allez, attaque.
Then after the bout is done, they'll remove their masks and then they'll again repeat those three salutes and then they'll walk forward and shake hands. It was a mandatory thing that they had to do. But in 2020, the world shut down. All of a sudden, athletes were concerned about social distancing, and so a lot of sports, including fencing, decided they would modify their rules temporarily in order to adapt to the changing environment. So in March 2020, right as the onset of the pandemic occurred, fencing's world governing body, the International Fencing Federation, or the FIE, issued a written public notice that handshakes were suspended until further notice, and then they replaced their previous handshake requirements with a salute and then a sword tap, which were the athletes would walk forward and they would tap blades. So this salute and the sword tap became the norm for the next few years, but slowly athletes started shaking hands again as more time passed away from the pandemic. Well, then on July 27, 2023, at the 2023 World Fencing Championships in Milan, Italy, this is the Super Bowl for fencing, right, outside of the Olympics, something happened at this match. It was a match between Ukrainian Olga Kharlan and Russian Anna Smirnova. You see, the Ukrainian athlete Kharlan won the match 15-7. And so at the end of the match, they're supposed to come together at the center of the strip and shake hands. So the Russian did. She walked forward and she extended her hand in order to shake. But the Ukrainian did not shake her hand. Instead, she extended her blade in order to do a sword tap. Well, the Russian then stood there with her hand extended, not shaking or not tapping, and the Ukrainian did the same. She just stood there with her sword extended. They were in a stalemate. Kharlan then walks away while the Russian Smirnova refused to leave the pist and said she sat down for 45 minutes in a sit-in protest in order to get Kharlan disqualified for a breach of etiquette, which in fencing is a big deal. It's called a black card offense, which means she's disqualified for the tournament. This is the World Championships. Well, while the Russian was protesting for 45 minutes, Kharlan was then seeded for her next round for the tournament. She was matched up with another opponent. They got a new judge. And so she started her prep. And as she was preparing for the match, she was then approached by the FIE to notify her that she was, in fact, disqualified from the tournament and she was suspended for 60 days. Now, real quick, there are a few things I need to point out here. Number one, Kharlan was not given a black card during the match by the referee, which is a very important detail. She was only disqualified after the match had ended and by the federation, not by the ref. The second important thing you need to know here is that this took place against the backdrop of the Russian invasion of Ukraine. And so Kharlan said that her choice of salute was meant as a sign of respect for her opponent, while still acknowledging the ongoing conflict between Ukraine and Russia. So before the match even started, she supposedly went and spoke with the FIE president, Emmanuel Katsidakis. And so the day prior, she spoke with him, and he apparently assured her that it was okay to not shake hands and instead only to offer to touch blades. But the FIE president that she spoke with, Emmanuel Katsidakis, was only the interim president. He'd only been in that job for less than a year because he was replacing the previous president, Russian oligarch Alisher Usmanov, who'd been the head of the FIE from 2008 all the way through 2022, but had to be replaced because he was sanctioned and blacklisted by the EU and the USA in response to the Russian-Ukraine conflict. And the third important thing that you need to know here is that this disqualification had much larger impacts. You see, not only was she disqualified from the individual competition that she was competing in, but she was also disqualified from the team competition, which happened a few days later. And more importantly, because she was disqualified from the World Championships, it means that she likely wouldn't be able to secure enough points to be able to qualify for the 2024 Paris Olympics. And this is a really big deal. We're going to talk about this later in the video when you find out who Olga Kharlan actually is, which I haven't told you too much about her yet, so just stay tuned. So what was the reaction? Well, first, let's mention the response from other athletes. For starters, you had another Russian Olympic fencer, Konstantin Lokunov. He stated that he thought the Russian fencer Anna Smirnova might have set a trap for Kharlan to try to get her disqualified because Smirnova had lost the bout. Lokunov said that although the FIE does have rules about shaking hands, the tapping of weapon blades in lieu of a handshake was completely acceptable during the pandemic and is still considered suitable by many fencers today. So that was from fencers. Then you had the Ukrainian tennis player, Elena Svitolina, who just 1 week prior at the Wimbledon 2023 semifinals also refused to shake hands with Russians and Belarusians. And so there was precedent because the Women's Tennis Association, who's kind of like the FIE, but for tennis, allowed her to not shake hands. And so Svitolina suggested because they're precedent, the FIE should also follow suit. Okay, so that was the athletes, but what about the Ukrainian coaches and the Ukrainian Federation? Well, later on the same day of the incident, the Ukrainian Fencing Federation's president said, quote, "We fully support Olga Kharlan in this situation. We will appeal this decision because the referee who judged the match did not give directly a black card or disqualify her. It was only later that the underhanded games began and the disqualification appeared. Already after the next opponent was determined, already after the judge for the next competition was determined." So basically, they submitted their appeal, hoping that the decision would get overturned. And then the following day, something surprising actually happened. Carlin received a personal letter from Thomas Bach. This is the president of the International Olympic Committee, the IOC. And he wrote in his letter that he expressed sympathy for her situation and notified her that, quote, "in light of the situation, she was going to be guaranteed a spot at the 2024 Summer Olympics." She's basically given a golden ticket. And if you want to read that letter, just go ahead and pause it and you can read it right here on the screen. So after Carlin received this letter, only a few hours later, the FIE put out their own statement that after consultation with the IOC, they decided to reverse their decision and reinstate Carlin at the 2023 World Fencing Championships, which would allow her to take part in the team saber competition that happened a few days later. Now, although she was reinstated, since the individual competition had already concluded at that point, the FIE's reversal came a little bit too late to allow Carlin to pursue her 5th individual world championships. That's right, I said 5th individual world championships, because up until this point, I really haven't mentioned who Olga Kharlan is and why this was such a big deal, why the president of the Olympics would send her a personal letter. Olga Kharlan is a 4-time individual women's world saber champion. She's a 6-time Olympic medalist. She's been ranked #1 in the world for women's saber for 5 seasons, from 2012 all the way through 2021, for like 10-year span. She won the team gold at the 2008 Beijing Olympics, an individual bronze at the 2012 in London, and then at 2016 Rio Olympics, she again won bronze in the individual and a silver in team. And then at the Tokyo 2020 Olympics, although being ranked #1 in the world, she was knocked out in the first round. So the Paris 2024 Olympics were a big deal. This was her redemption. And so after being disqualified and then reinstated, receiving this automatic qualifier, this golden ticket, when she got to the 2024 Paris Olympics, she didn't disappoint. She went on to win her 3rd bronze medal in the individual event, and she secured a gold medal for the team competitions, making her the most decorated Ukrainian Olympian of all time. So what rule changes occurred as a result of this? Well, after the Olga Kharlan handshaking incident of 2023, the International Fencing Federation officially changed its rules so that the previously required mandatory handshakes at the end of a match would become optional, with distance salutes being considered an acceptable alternative. So what do you think? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below, and if you like this, I have a whole series on band techniques you can go check out. Thanks for watching.